Okay, we're starting. That's great. So, I'm not sure what your expectations of the talk are. So, we're going to go through let's just get started. So, the title is Estonia, Information Warfare and Lessons Learned. That sounds kind of like a big title. We can expect a lot from it, I suppose. We'll get it down to what exactly we'll talk about in a second. Gesundheit. And the secondary title, which I'm not sure showed up on your brochure, is The First Internet War. Now, some of us are actually in the security field, and at least whenever I hear the term the first Internet War, I get pissed, or at least I get a little bit agitated. Because I haven't really seen a war online yet, except for what we face every day. That could be kind of an everyday war. But what happened in Estonia happened many, many times before. So why are we calling it everywhere and continue to repeat it in professional and in popular circles as the first internet war, including myself? So let's just get started. Before we do anything else, an important note here. All the credit, absolutely all the credit, belongs to the Estonian CERT, the Estonian ISPs, the Estonian banks, the professionals themselves in Estonia who actually, this sounds very weird when talking about the internet, stood the line and protected their infrastructure and their country. And I did spend some time there, and I did help out as a foot soldier for a very short while, almost a week, and I did write the postmortem for this attack, which hopefully will become public, but none of the credit goes to me. And just to make sure you read the second line, all credit of operations and everything else for that matter during this conflict goes to them, which of course means that all the blame is mine, but the credit is still theirs. So just to be clear about that, I'm just here to give you the information. Now, who am I? My name is Gadi, and I'm in security, much like many of us here, others here. And where do I work? I work at a computer security company, a vendor called Beyond Security, mostly vulnerability assessment stuff. And what will we be talking about? So, Estonia itself, we'll begin there. What's Estonia, where it is? Some of us heard about it, some of us haven't. Information warfare. We won't really be talking much about information warfare as a concept, but we'll go here and there to some degree. Lessons learned. We will not go very far into what lessons were actually learned from this so-called fighting and what Estonia is going to implement now and what their actual conclusions and recommendations were, or mine for that matter in my postmortem and theirs, etc. But we will try to first get rid of the FUD. A lot of information has been given in the press. A lot of it has not been accurate. We want to first learn what happened there technically, or at least chronologically, and then continue to speak about actual case studies we can learn from what happened in Estonia to try and look at this strategically. And just to get you guys thinking, can anybody just raise their hand and define in one sentence what a battle, B-A-T-T-L-E, battle is for me? Anybody, please? Yes.
The meeting of two or more hostile forces and attempting to overcome the other.
The meeting of two or more hostile forces attempting to overcome the other. Okay. Can anybody try and explain to me what a battle would look like online? Just off the top of your heads. I mean, we all know about computer security, or we should. We know about abuse, we know about electronic crime, or e-crime, or online crime, whatever else you want to call it. Cybercrime, sorry, I hate that word. And, but when it comes down to it, we have a very big problem when we talk about information warfare. I'm not talking about psychological warfare, deception, all the other stuff that people put in there. Networks and computers only. Our problem is we have the very topmost of our theory made, done, complete, looked over, or at least we believe somebody did it in the past, and so we believe that somebody did it. and that is national security strategy, general strategy of war. When we go into war, are we going to have, or what tools will we have? Is information warfare, computer warfare, electronic warfare is something different, so let's not mention that again, going to be a part of it? And national security strategy, how are we to defend ourselves? A little bit below that, we have critical infrastructure, transportation systems, all these SCADA systems, energy, etc., that also concern us. Impact, concerns, threats, general national strategy. All good. Then we have some spots here and there, but we go all the way down, and still climbing down all the way to actual computer networks. This computer here launched an attack, no matter for what purpose, no matter what actually happened or how the process was planned on this computer here. Packets moved. There may be some planning, there may be some logistical support, but that's basically the gap we're missing. There are some things that fill that gap in public that we can try and look at, but if there is if some of this exists in private or by some militaries or countries, I am not aware of it. So Estonia, and what really matters to me in Estonia, is that although yes, things there were very interesting, and I'll show you what in a second, although it was interesting, technically it wasn't that sophisticated. Technically, nothing there was very new. Almost nothing there was new. But we actually finally have one incident that we can take a step back from, look at, and pick apart case studies, actual case study for strategy, for tactics. They may not fit everything, but we can study them and try to get to how we actually, that's just one of the questions I want to answer. How do we wage battle online? And just for the sake of argument, let me give you one example that I used yesterday. Are you able to take your offensive soldier and make your offensive soldier into a defensive soldier in regular battle? It is likely that you can do so. Online, I'm not so sure. It's a very disconnected warfare, not just asymmetrical. And with that very short and not very clear introduction, I would like to get running into what actually happened. So, Estonian CERT, ISPs, all the professionals over there, the banks, all the credit, all the blame is mine. So, Estonia. I mean, anybody read Dilbert? So, this a few weeks passed from when this first happened, and I used to run security for the Israeli government internet security operations. And I started the Israeli government CERT, and I said, yeah, we've seen all this before. Sure, something happens that people get upset about, political tensions, military tensions, online kiddies get upset. They say, hey, let's attack the really evil, whoever it may be. They organize, maybe they have some special tools that they planned on their own. They DDoS, they deface, usually causing the other side to attack back. I actually have the blame for causing such an attack by myself, because when I ran the Israeli CERT, just starting to learn what's happening, I forgot a lesson from history and went and actually spoke to the press. So the next day, the Israeli kiddies launched a full-scale attack against the guys who were attacking us. So, press, staff, Albonia. So, anyway, I know the Estonian CERT people, very nice people, met them in internet security operation circles. 1 week passes, 2 week pass, and I said, this is not a regular attack. This is not just kiddies, hacker groups, online terrorists defacing sites. What's going on over there? So 2 weeks pass, and I send an email to the Estonian CERT manager and say, Hilar, everything okay over there? You need any help? I can come over the weekend if you like, try and be a full soldier. And he answers and said, when do I pick you up from the airport? So I was a little bit scared. I come from a very safe place called Israel. I live in the West Bank. And sadly, I can't take my Glock with me on the airplane, and I want to go to somewhere in Eastern Europe that's probably Albonia, third world country, Eastern Europe, main export is mud, main underground export is baby with beards. Scott Adams and Dilbert really made me feel bad about myself. And then I actually landed over there. The plane started slowing over Latvia because the country is so small. And I was very surprised. So, Estonia who, right? Small country in Eastern Europe, easterneurope.de, Estonia. Not sure if there is any relation, I just found it's funny when I wrote the presentation. 1.3 or so million people. It's the northernmost of the 4 Baltic states, but to be honest, it's pretty much Nordic. Many Estonian people here may throw tomatoes at me. That's just my observations. I hopped on a shuttle, and within an hour and a half, I was visiting F-Secure in Finland, so it was pretty much fun. It has a flat tax throughout the country. Very interesting. And there is no tax on beer. Or alcohol in general. So a lot of blonde girls, but that's probably not very good for Black Hat, right? And no offense to any of the girls here, we love you, that's the issue. And let's get down to, at least some of us, and let's get down to business. Estonia is a leader. So I land there, it's an extremely advanced country with a lot of blonde girls and no tax on beer. Did I reach heaven? I mean, where is the mud from Dilbert? And seriously, after the fall of the Soviet Union, they pretty much built their infrastructure from scratch, okay? And as the internet was the newest technology around, they built it on the internet, or a lot of it anyway. And just as an example, and I'm not sure exactly if it's 99, 98%, but 99% of acceptance of online banking. And when we say acceptance of online banking, it's not us going online to check what our status is, and it's not transferring a small amount of money around. I stop people in the streets and ask them, when have you last been to the bank? And they said, last evening. No. When have you last left your home and went to the bank? 10 years ago or so was the answer I got. It's decades ahead of most of the Western world, in my opinion, if not just 5 years. You know, I can't really predict the future. I can try. This is, in the US, this is probably horrible for you guys. I find it really amazing. ID cards, just like your driver license, with PKI chips. An identifying certificate on the ID card of every citizen. And the interesting thing about the Estonians is, a friend of mine was just at a PKI conference, is that when the Estonian guy was in charge of making this happen, went on stage, he actually came and said, here is what we did wrong. And not just in, let's see what our mistakes were and how we can politically make them look better, or try to change the organization politically so we can get things done. No. This is how we failed. In the States, or generally, people try to not say problem, but challenge. They would say problem. They would say failure. That's the culture in Estonia, as far as I understood it. Again, I was there for under a week, so I can't really speak of the culture. Some people here in the room actually can, but I was amazed by this amazing culture. Now, they had the elections for the parliament from home. They had 2 elections over there recently. These were done using these ID cards from online computers, from the safety of their own homes. And down to earth, we have elementary schools, for example, grammar schools. The parents would check online. I mean, this happens in some schools all around the world, but everyone there would check online to see comments from teachers, what books do the kids need for tomorrow morning. It's more advanced than any of us when it comes to the internet anyway. Not Elbonia at all. And there are blonde girls, not babies with beards. Sorry if I offended anybody, I'll probably do it again. So, preparations, right, before the attacks. The 9th of May approaches, and, well, online attacks are expected, and that's because the 9th of May is a pretty big date. I believe it's the victory date of the Russians over Nazis. Yeah. And the Estonian CERT and the ASO, which is the government ISP, yeah, let's just try and imagine that in the States. One ISP for the whole government. Okay. Just think about it for a second. So, the government is still in work from the ISPs, right? Okay, so strong server is prepared. They spoke on the phone and said, hey, you know, the 9th of May is approaching. There's this statue issue in the middle of the city. Why don't we go and prepare a very strong server behind a protected network that we can actually move websites to if we have a big problem, if somebody attacks us. And they have been attacked in the past, but nothing on a really big scale. So it seemed like a pretty good approach. And they did something extra, which was contact websites that were likely to be attacked and say, can you prepare a plain text version that you can serve in case of real problems? And they said, sure. So these are the preparations they went through. Nothing too significant, but, well, pretty good, in my opinion. And, well, the attack started. So Saturday, the 27th of April, 10 p.m., we have the attacks. And at 2 a.m., there is a phone update. The ASO manager calls Hillel from the CERT, who was abroad at the time, and says, well, you see, we have some government websites under attack, as we expected. And, well, the servers are holding up. And, you know what? The sites that are under attack, let's move them, Hillel says, to this protected server so that we can prevent any problems from surprising us tomorrow morning. And, well, 6 a.m., phone update. There are more targets, and, well, the well-protected server is really under stress. It's up, but it's not doing very well. So, in the evening, everybody meets up together at the ASO's offices, and that's the ISP professionals, networking professionals, the people from the CERT, from the ASO, all around, the banks, and they see a lot of attacks, ICMP echo floods, DNS attacks, SYN floods, just traffic. A lot of stuff coming their way, just DDoS. Nothing significant, but still, nothing that hasn't been seen before on the internet, but it's enough to take them down. They're still online, they're fighting, and I mean, this doesn't look too sophisticated to any of us. I mean, we have seen many reports of attacks in the past, but for them, it's big because, hey, we're crumbling over here. What's going on? What happened? And they all meet up. So these attacks resulted in an increased traffic at 100 to 1,000 times from normality. Now, I'm not sure how much bandwidth you keep for a rainy day, but it's not 100 to 1,000 times from normality. The reason we can't tell exactly how much times it was bigger, is because collecting information at that point became somewhat problematic. The lines were, well, full. And they analyzed the attacks and proceeded with regular incident response. So far, so good. Well, not so good, but you understand the point. So the 28th of April shows up. They have another staff meeting. And the attacks are more successful, really problematic. And they're getting to the realization that this is not a regular attack. And they start calling this a cyber riot. We'll speak about why it was called a cyber riot in a second. But let's stop here and discuss what was happening in Estonia at the time. The statue, I'm not sure how many of you have the background of what actually happened in Estonia at these times, and if you don't, you'll have to search for it online. But basically there was a statue that was a war memorial with graves under it for the anonymous soldier, I believe. And this was for the Russians' victory over the German forces. And the Estonians decided to move it. Now, when I was in Estonia, I tried to understand the two sides. And every time I thought I was on Estonia's side, I heard something from Russians and went to the Russian side. And this kept going because I honestly, coming from Israel, I wasn't able to get in touch with the story. Whenever somebody would do something nice, somebody would do something bad. No reason whatsoever. But both sides have good claims, but eventually it was Estonia was under attack. So these things were happening in the streets. There were riots about this moved statue and the moved graves. And at the same time, this all started on the internet. So this is really fuzzy background information. But let's just say there were riots about something in the streets. The police was handling it. And then the attacks online started. So now we have a ton, well, not specifically a ton, but a lot of Russian language websites that basically speak of these, sorry for the language, fucking Estonian fascists. If you ask any Russian, they'll tell you why the Estonians are spoken of in this fashion. But they get really upset about this. For Russia, the 20 million or 30 million lost during World War II is a very sensitive issue. And so they attack. And this is not really, just like we mentioned earlier, just one group or just one organization that launches an attack against Estonia. It's a population. And that's one of the distinctions with this attack that we'll see exactly what happened in a few minutes. So an agreement was reached, and what the Estonian CERT basically said was, look, we've all been on our feet for 2-3 days now, trying to respond to this. And this was emergency mode. We have to move this to routine. We have to routinely respond to all these attacks and make sure that Monday morning, this was very lucky that it happened over the weekend. We have to make sure that Monday morning, everything works. Go to sleep. Report back at 6 a.m. And that's what happened. So they got back to work at 6 a.m. And that's what the blogosphere looked like in the resulting Estonian aftermath. I really like this picture. It was at one Estonian newspaper. I'm sorry I don't have the URL for you right now. So the picture itself will not be in the presentation you will be given, or if you ask for it anyway, for copyright reasons. But I believe it's a very good portrayal of the whole attack. We have the guy with the Kalashnikov over there, and, well, you got the picture. So you can still go to Google and try to search for this Latin phrase, and you will find a lot of different blogs, forums, Russian language websites, basically telling people, here is how you attack Estonia. And one of these simple examples, sorry, anybody here can read Russian? Yes. Any volunteers? To just translate it into one line? Yeah? Just go for it. Dimitri, I think that's good. So basically, no, he did a good job, but that's what I waited for. That's Dimitri, and he's a very good guy. So basically, they give them instructions, and he got to the critical point. Oh, do CMD, it will open a console window for you, right? In that console window, do ping, blah, 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 Estonian website, click enter. Click the up button, click enter. Click the up button, click enter again. So these simple instructions for how to attack Estonia, provided with a very simple tool for the entire population to use. Now let's stop for a second. Even if 1 million people right now over the next hour go and do ping, enter, the likelihood of some of these websites going down is extremely low. We should not underplay this. Pings can still be significant, but come on. So, there are some other tools, just simple batch scripts, for example, that automate it a little bit. We snipped out a long list of targets, but again, many different tools were created. But this was not what was interesting. The blogosphere was actually updated, whether it was daily or every couple of days, with, okay, guys, that isn't working, let's try that. Oh yeah, look at that defense, we should try that. But, you know, as far as I try to describe it, it was more like, okay, today you use this tool. Today you attack these addresses. So the blogosphere was responding to what was happening in the Estonian defense. So And the Estonian side, what happened was that there was ad hoc intelligence. Some few hundred is our best estimate. Estonian citizens speaking Russian volunteered without any official forum or any organization and started going to all the Russian blogs. And through their networking, through their social wealth, they managed to reach the CERT and say, hey guys, this is what's happening right now. And the CERT was actually able to go out and say, tomorrow is DNS day. We need to prepare our DNS servers or watch them more closely. So that was pretty interesting. Here, for example, I took this from the F-Secure blog, or weblog. DDoS attacker, download and use, right, specifically for Estonia. So other people were on this blogosphere, not just pinging Estonian websites, but rather doing something extra, creating specific tools, doing some more sophisticated attacks. I mean, let's just look at the ASO itself, which is the ISP for the government in Estonia. So after the initial filtering, it went from 4 megapackets per second of ICMP echo to 1.2 megapackets per second. The line itself is 10 megabits only, and it was full. Couldn't really do much, and the ISP uplink, Elion, was also under some trouble. So Cisco Guard, which was there by almost mistake, was ready for a pilot really, was put in place on Elion, and from 1.2 megapackets per second, it went to 150 kilopackets per second. And they configured Cisco Guard a little bit further, and it went down to 3 kilopackets per second. So that was pretty useful, to be honest, just that one attack at the 27th, 28th of April. But that's just one attack. Again, 4 megapackets is significant. That's pretty big, right? 4 million packets will take down many different people. But it's not that big. We'll talk about it in a few. Now, the traffic consisted of, again, 3 megapackets of ICMP echo attacks, 1 megapacket of SYN attacks. Well, not really clear over there. 150 kilopackets of other types of attacks, and then just only 3 kilopackets of legitimate traffic. Of course, this is the weekend, but it gives you a good understanding of what happened only in that original attack. So only 3 kilopackets of legitimate traffic. That's pretty amazing. Now, comparing this with attacks on the root DNS servers or on some big ISPs, we're saying 4 megapackets per second? Okay, if you attack my DSL line, maybe. I'm kidding. But we know it's a significant attack, but looking at it from the perspective of people who have been under major attacks, we say, I mean, come on, that's nothing. But it was sizable, and it was the right size for Estonia. But more important than that, the impact was significant. Meaning, even if it was just one packet, and it caused the impact of what happened in Estonia, as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. The right tool for the right job. The scale, however, was impressive. I mean, consider the blogosphere. We have these tons of people just pinging all the time, some of them running batch files through ping, some of them running more impressive tools. But because the blogosphere was fired up, there were a lot of others. So, attacks of interest. We have had a spam attack, an email attack, against the Estonian Parliament mail server. And there were 2 days of downtime. I'm not sure about this time. I need to check it again. Again, things are still in flux. We're still getting the full post-mortem formalized. But 2 days of the Estonian Parliament's mail being down in a country that's basically based on the internet, that's pretty significant. There were 2 routers who crashed, or routers, or whatever you want to call them. In the first case, the router was misconfigured. Or in other words, and I really am sorry for the language, shit happens. Seriously, there doesn't always need to be a bad guy, or as is often said and can be attributed very easily using Wikipedia, don't always look for malice. Mistakes are easy enough. And the second case, a router, and this happened quite a bit, couldn't handle the traffic. So these were more interesting, but now we get to other issues such as botnet attacks. Now, these people who had pinging or add the instructions on how to ping or how to download this or that tool to attack Estonia, they didn't really launch a botnet attack, right? But just look at this, and this is happening pretty often. We have one or two measuring attacks, at least that's what we think they are, because this happens a lot in DDoS. And these happen for 2 to 5 minutes, no more than that. And continuing from there, there could be up an hour of nothingness, up to 2 or 3 weeks of nothingness, and then an attack, a significant one, that's precisely what you need in order to take down that link or that network. So this is not special to Estonia, but where did these botnets come from? So, again, they're quite regular, but, and this is pretty interesting, the botnet attacks, at least mostly, came only from outside of Estonia. There were nearly, or none, I am very afraid of saying every, all, none, of the bots came actually from the local networks until later on. Again, where did all this come from? What's the significance of this? You can look at the different attack here, and here is your answer. A comment was actually made. I believe this was also shown, a similar issue was shown on the F-Secure blog. And somebody was asking for donations to be made to a PayPal account because he started a fund. He wanted, or she wanted, to raise money to hire a botnet to attack Estonia. So people took the initiative. You fire up the blogosphere, you fire up the population. You can't expect everybody to just go and say, down with that statue, for example, if you're a mob. Some of them will pick up a gun. Some of them will break in. So the interesting thing about this attack, if you notice, and we believe that the message and the MRTG graph shown are actually related, but we can't be sure of that, is that at exactly 12 GMT time, which is 3 a.m. Estonian time, you can see a drop in the attack. It just disappears at midnight and was going on for 24 hours. So this could probably be a paid botnet attack. Now, another interesting thing, just to make sure that we covered this, it was just people. The scale of the attack is so interesting because it started with pings, but it went all the way to the most sophisticated attacks that any of us know of, because it's just a population. They got fired up. And to fire up a population, you don't need much more than ping. So, special botnets. This has also been seen before, especially by some Russian spam gangs. Again, unrelated. I have nothing against Russians. In fact, a fifth of Israel's population is probably Russians. My ex-girlfriend was Russian. Just doing a little disclaimers here because I don't want to get shot later on. But unrelated, there was, for example, a botnet, we call it a botnet attack, where suddenly, without any warning, a lot of hosts started attacking Estonia. And when they were attacking Estonia, these hosts were looked at. They did not communicate with the command and control server or a C2 server. Nobody was controlling them. These machines did not probe around trying to propagate. Nothing of the sort. So how did this botnet come to be? What we have learned in the past when we have seen such attacks is that basically these samples of bots were likely just dropped there by an existing botnet. Probably on the same computers there was a sample, the same sample on every single computer if we were going to look for it, but I can't sign on that. And this seemingly untraceable botnet with a new sample, a new code, launched an attack. The IP addresses that were attacked were hard-coded into the bot. So this shows there was some planning, at least into this attack. There were some resources pulled into this. But we'll talk about who did this in a second. Just some more interesting attacks than just pings. So incident response, right? How do you do incident response, especially on the level of the country? It's not that difficult. You know, you start with what are the sources, right? And hopefully we can move through this quickly to get to actual interesting issues with strategy. So where are the attacks coming from? Who is being attacked? What are the targets? And if you're dealing with botnets, can we try and trace down the command and control servers so these can be nullified? Pretty straightforward. And of course, the first and the only goal is to bring systems back online. You're not trying to identify attacks. You're not trying to respond to them. You only care about the systems staying online, but whatever means are necessary, or you can muster at the problem, basically. So on the 28th, on the meeting, 2 decisions were made that changed this response methodology. One was, don't concentrate on the sources. Forget about that. Too many attacks, too many attackers, too many targets. All we can really concentrate on, in this case, is the targets first. Look at what's actually happening and go back from there. And the technical analysis, which was so far done done a lot, was to be limited. We don't have the manpower. Please analyze, do significant analysis only if it helps mitigation. Stop there. Now, the first line, don't concentrate on the sources of the attacks or the attackers, right? But rather on the targets first. We can just change targets and say impact. Look at the impact and you know where you need to respond. This is not preventative. This is pure reactive. So, Estonia has a very unique situation. First of all, everyone knows everyone, which means that if you don't go and change the ACL on the router right now because you can't access it remotely or whatever, I'll drive over and drag you out of bed. And the Estonian culture is pretty much like that. So it's very unique. Now, being small and the country's online presence being pretty much concentrated, you can actually block incoming connections to pretty much the entire country. Of course, on the internet, nothing is ever perfect, and this is probably one of the responses that worked best and cannot be scaled up to the United States, for example. At least not easily, at least not for everything. But again, this worked, was pretty interesting, so I mention it. Now, because Estonia is so small, and everybody knows everybody, there are methodologies on how to respond to incidents. They meet each other, they talk, they have worked together in the past. But when something happens, they pick up the phone. One of the official organizations in the country, the website was under attack for a while, and it went down. So the police, sorry, no reason to add this, I'm just trying to remember. That was not one of the stories I want to share. The police, one of the smaller police websites went down. And then they just raised a few calls, and within an hour, somebody was with the server driving over to another ISP to put it there. This might happen between friends in the States, right? But the way everything works over there with the networking of a small group, it's much like a startup or a special forces team. It's not a huge corporation trying to work through bureaucracy. So I suppose that worked for them very well. Another issue which was really, in my opinion, luck, although you can say luck had nothing to do with this, was that they had the CERT, the Estonian CERT, with only 2 people there, which are Hilar and Ivar. Now, the CERT, this is due to, again, luck, is the first one to respond here. Because the first targets were on the Estonian government's sites. So as the Estonian government sites were under attack, the CERT immediately, of course, contacted ASO, and they were in contact with Elion, which is the uplink ISP, and as it happens, the CERT took charge. The second lucky thing that happened is the Estonian CERT manager is a very assertive and funny guy. So if somebody doesn't do something, he'll go and, if it was me, he would sit on them, but I'm not sure what the right analogy for him is. And the third thing that was lucky is that many of the other websites that were under attack also sat at Elion, such as the bank websites. So Elion was already in contact with CERT and ASO, and the banks were already in the loop, and they were all sitting on the same chat channel, and things clicked. And from that moment on, by consensus and by just being there, the CERT did its intended job and basically managed the operation of the defense. And Although Estonia is extremely advanced with its internet infrastructure and users, as we mentioned before, it was ill-prepared, in my opinion, for the attacks. It was in some ways, although it has seen attacks in the past, again, my opinion, a virgin country in online attacks. It's a small country, nice people, no real reason to be attacked. And therefore, they weren't ready on that aspect. But the incident response proved useful. Meaning, if everything else fails, incident response saved the day. And I believe this is something we've all been seeing the past few years. You can try and prevent attacks, you can try and be ready. But eventually, whether it's malicious or a mistake, something does go wrong. It's how you respond that you are judged by. Of course, you'll be hanged anyway, because they will want someone to blame, and the security guy is always a convenient target. But this is an important lesson. If I have to take one issue, one suggestion from the entire Estonian incident, it would be incident response worked, which is pretty cool. Now, that is the internal incident response. But what about all these attacking sources and botnets located around the world? So they escalated. They escalated much like you would in an ISP calling tech support. They talked to other European certs in Germany, in Finland, and in Slovenia. And these certs, in turn, did all the abuse reporting, spoke to different internet security operation communities, and took care of things. Now, although these certs were very useful, although they helped a lot and a lot of credit they deserve this credit. This reaction failed. It did not, in short order, mitigate the attack. There is a very interesting and critical lesson to learn here, which is the internet is international infrastructure. We cannot protect ourselves alone on the internet unless we cut ourselves out, and that may not work. Look at China and all the other great firewalls that are mainly made for other reasons, but still. It's a global infrastructure, but we haven't yet found a way to secure it globally. I won't make a political statement here at this point. So, Estonia's predicament of e-success, and this is pretty well known, the more technological a country is, right, the more reliant on technology it becomes, and and therefore all the more vulnerable. And the same, of course, applies to usage and reliability on the internet. And I'm not quite sure, and this is just guessing, this is not my position to guess even, what would happen if tomorrow morning, you can go watch Die Hard 4, really good movie, unless you're in the mind of being very technical and security minded, and then you'll get really pissed at the movie. If you're just there to enjoy, really great movie. Go look how the world is destroyed via the internet. But if the US is under a cyber attack tomorrow morning, and say it's very successful, I don't know how reliant the US is on this, and I do know there are people out there who are taking care of this, or at least are supposed to. Very good people. US CERT, the DoD, DHS, etc. Very nice people. And yet, if the internet does go down, will it be catastrophic at this point? I don't know. Maybe it will go into depression, maybe only into recession, the economy that is, the country. But Estonia, and the one interesting thing about Estonia is, they are completely reliant on the internet. Everything is on the internet. Which means it may not be completely scalable to what may happen in the States or in other countries around the world, such as Israel, but it is a window that we can look through. So, this is very, very important. As we said, still people in the streets, 10 years, not even seen a real bank. When, during the downtime, and some of the banks had some downtime, although not significant, a very large percentage of Estonia could not buy groceries. To quote Hiller, it was about milk, bread, and gas, or petrol if you like. You couldn't use your credit cards. It all goes online. Now, there are, of course, the non-client transactions. So, altogether, the critical infrastructure here became something very, very different. And we're going to talk about that. Now, progress is good. I love the internet, I love functionality, I love everything else. But what of resilience and fallback? I mean, e-banking is amazing. And the banks save a ton of money, as do we, if we use the web channel or the internet channel. And I'm not going to talk right now about phishing or fraud, just about resilience and fallback. If we move more and more users online, that would mean, for example, that we need less and less branches, actual physical places where they could go and take care of what they need to take care of. But then if the internet channel is no longer there, and we, for example, only have one branch for every 4 we used to have, there is no fallback. The system collapses. Estonia faced this problem. The 1 out of 4 I just invented. Second, please, with the questions. Okay, no questions? Oh, yeah, okay. But just something to think about. So, defining critical infrastructure. I'm sorry if this is boring, but it's very important because it's what we learned in Estonia. Critical infrastructure was not what you would usually consider critical infrastructure. I would be a big sinner to say that transportation, energy, etc. are not critical infrastructure and should not be protected. But what proved to be more important as a critical infrastructure rather than second is the internet itself, is the business and the private sector. That means the banks. That means the ISPs. That means the press. Yes, the press. Reporters became critical infrastructure. And let's not talk about manipulation right now because that did not happen. The press websites, the media websites were not hacked. But if all online press or a significant number of the important online press sites disappear, especially during an emergency, and this was an emergency both in the streets and online, and people couldn't fill gas or buy bread or milk, this is critical. Press is critical infrastructure. So ISPs, banks, media, they need to be protected. They had to be protected. But they are the private and business sector. They are not the government. Now, opinion-wise, we can come and say, well, banks are regulated or semi-regulated on many different fronts. Whether it's for credit or how they secure their users or their money. I am not sure how they will respond if they will ever be regulated as to how they are to do any of the stuff we talked about. I'm not sure it would be a good idea to restrict business growth that way. And I'm going to stop with the opinion in a second. But one thing I do know, and let's not even talk about ISP regulation, is that when such a bank, and we have actually one of the Estonian banks sitting here in the crowd, and I hope he will come to me and say how wrong I was later on, if such a bank is under such a significant attack, where will that bank go for help? And I'm not sure they'll be able to have the connections with the foreign CERTs, the international internet security community, the local ISPs. They could probably handle it, but it's a big problem, especially if the entire country is under siege. Now, defining critical infrastructure. Not as significant, perhaps, when first looked upon. When we look at critical infrastructure, there are, again, the critical systems for the country itself, the civil infrastructure. Then we have a lot of other, it's a very long list, but if we have to put it into 3, we always consider the critical infrastructure, which we can refer to as military or survival. The private sector and business sector we are aware of, but do not have direct influence over, if we are the government. One infrastructure which some of us, not all of us in any way, have given some consideration to, but never know what to actually do with, is you, me, Andy here, you sitting here and look in the screen, some guy over there at the end, and some kid in Korea. On computers, PCs, and not just in our country. But that's another issue. So, compromised home computers within Estonia were used in the attack. Now, this was as part of botnet, of course. But realistically, these attacks weren't very successful, if we're to talk about the Estonian attack itself. It does illustrate the risk of civilian computers and what type of threat they could pose to the country itself if they are compromised. And we know that we can barely find any computer out there that is not today, with some spyware, malware, blowware, whatever word you want to call it. And again, whether it's some malicious code, whether it's actual botnets, I don't know, but this is a significant threat that needs to be taken care of because we can't even handle e-crime today on the internet. So internet war. And I would like to give a different example which is not directly related. And that's Winnie. Anybody ever heard of Winnie? It's a P2P application written in Japanese. Nothing significant, it's not even very good. But it's on pretty much practically, and again I'm exaggerating, but pretty much on every computer in Japan. I'm not talking about information that's been lost, critical and secret information that's been lost through Winnie in the past. But that application has vulnerabilities in it. It's already in every computer in Japan. Or, well, can't say every. It's not a botnet, it's just an application. Japan is facing a very serious problem today. It's not Estonia, just a different example. One application with known vulnerabilities that connects everybody together over the internet for the same country. I would be scared if I was Japan. And they did arrest the guy, although for copyright reasons. So who's going to patch? Oh, it was released, right. But after it was released, I'm not sure it will make any updates to the program. So who was behind the attacks? I have an answer for you guys. You haven't heard it before. Everybody has been running away. The answer is the KGB. Okay, the KGB no longer exists, at least officially. But let's get serious for a second here. I can't tell whether it's just an ad hoc loose coupling, coordination, organization of people in the blogosphere, or if it was a planned assault, if it was orchestrated. With technical information alone, I just can't tell. Nobody is able to tell. Anybody who's been pointing fingers is wrong, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Actually, it's beyond opinion. They're wrong. Now, this could have been this could have been a blogosphere meme, right? It could have been an epidemic. We have seen a lot of links, ideas, cute things spread on blogs and forums everywhere within days. This spread within minutes. But again, I find it hard to believe it was just a meme and different people, loose couplings of people created ad hoc planning. Somebody told people how to attack. Somebody kept updating people how to attack. But we can't really tell again if it was, despite my opinion, orchestrated or not. Organized in some fashion? Absolutely. By some people or somebody? I don't know. Now, this is very critical. This is a basic rule of information warfare. You may know who your rival is. You may even know all your enemies, or think you do anyway. But you may not know who is actually attacking you. You may not know your attacker. You can guess, but you may not know. So, there are several indications suggesting the tool level that this was actually organized and planned. Let's go over them one by one, just 4 of them. It started virtually at the same times as the incidents in Tallinn streets, right? The Russian-speaking blogosphere updated periodically with new attacks, instructions and tools, adjusting, responding to defensive efforts in Estonia. There were originally virtually no bots that were involved from within Estonia. Consider a bot, a computer, launches an attack that's inside Estonia's network. The ISP can very quickly say, oh, there is a host that's attacking us, here is the command and control server it's connecting to. We can just pull it off the net, we can go there, drive for a couple of minutes, and pull the malware from the computer and try to analyze it. So if it's global, we need global cooperation, but it's much easier for us if it's local. So originally, no bots attacked locally. Maybe it was OPSEC, people being very careful. Maybe it was planned. Consider the difference between attacking from outside your country or network and from inside your country or network. Needs to be considered. Now, as we mentioned, at least one botnet attack was of specially constructed samples and code base built specifically for the attack. So again, loose coupling, some botnet kiddies or spammers or organized crime people said, what? The fucking Estonian fascist Nazis, or in whatever order, did what? And joined into the huge population epidemic that was happening back then? Or somebody actually orchestrated this? Proof? I have no proof. Blames? I really like the idea of blaming the KGB. But again, it's no longer there. So, the Russians are coming, or not. They could be a coincidence, each of them alone. But even alone, they do show of organization. I'm not repeating myself, but it's important. So, was it the Russians? Fact, yes. Was it Russia? Opinion, absolutely not. I doubt that Russia would do something like this. But again, who am I? It's just my opinion. Now, unless you really read the tone of what the Russian politicians said, and they didn't come out and say, we're actually going to attack Estonia, but they did like what the people in Russia and the Russian people around the world were doing. In fact, one of the attackers was a Russian-born, a Russian Estonian who just did the ping thing. So we knew it wasn't a compromised host. It was actually somebody who was participating in the attack. He was picked up by the police. Nothing happened with this later on, but people were really fired up about this. So Estonian politicians, that's a whole different issue. If you listen to them, they used to say, it's the Russians, it's Russia, for a good reason too. But it's politicians. If we have to ignore them for a second, which is sometimes useful, at least when talking about technology, then I would have to say it's not Russia. Now, what I call an unwitting zombie fifth column, I've been looking for this definition for a long time. How do I define your computer over there, all of our computers, whether it's a botnet or it's Winnie or it's any other compromised machine around the country? How do we define that? How do we define a soldier that may be still working for you, is not a spy, is not a traitor, it's not friendly fire, but at the same time is working for the enemy? I haven't gotten that far yet, but the fifth column, if you like, is a very good definition. Adding unwitting and zombie is mine. So a fifth column is basically, there are different stories about how this started. Some of them are with Lev Trotsky in Russia. But it's usually affiliated with the Spanish Civil War, where a general there said, when asked about the size of his army, I have 4 columns, but I have a fifth one, and he's in the streets of Madrid. Whether it was referring to infiltrated soldiers or to the people of Madrid, I don't know. But that's where it right now comes from. And this comes from, my information comes from Wikipedia in English and in Hebrew that says completely different things. So the second thing that I went through was biological warfare example. The biological warfare example. For example, let's say example again. If I do trade with prisoners of war, and I infect mine with some sort of disease, then that would be somewhat similar, wouldn't it? And botnets and Winnie, we discussed that. And there is, of course, Martin van Crevel, who spoke about countries versus organizations in war. But this is about populations attacking. This is just a concept that I'm currently developing beyond what's been developed so far. But it's something that happened in Estonia. And I find it very interesting to consider again that our most important infrastructure is our citizens, our own PCs, and not just ours, but around the world. And how do we even start to protect ourselves from that? But not everything is lost. So what was the attacker's strategy in all of this? There are many, many different things to consider. I, unfortunately, don't have the time to go through all of them, but just a few of them. So cyber terrorism versus cyber riot or internet riot. Cyber terrorism has been referred to many things in the past, but what's actually been happening is different groups of hackers coming together and defacing sites or launching DDoS attacks, etc. Now, online, we have seen this blogosphere go live, and just consider for a second, if you're a part of a mob, how can you influence it if you're alone? If you try to move a little bit to the right, would the mob move with you? If there are 20 more people with you, would the mob move with you a little bit to the right? If you actually go and shout, down with that statue, would the statue fall? Probably. So what about online? This is really similar to mob control, mass psychology. Using the internet to create an online mob has proven itself. This will receive more attention. This is taking psychological warfare, this is taking deception, this is taking intelligence warfare and really making it active, proactive. And online mob control, just think about that. Now, the two ideas are attacking from outside of the country and from inside of the country or organization network. Very simple to understand, very critical when actually used. Attacking the business and private infrastructure. I don't believe that demands any explanation. Attacking the routing infrastructure. This comes last. Doesn't really require much of an explanation. What about the defender's strategy? So again, their goal was maintain the regular service and the stability of the country's internet, the country's infrastructure. Very simple goal. Now, Clausewitz actually discusses defense and attacks, the attacker and defender, and which is more powerful. Following Estonia, and again, I can't really go into it right now, that doesn't seem to be the case online. He believes that defense is more powerful. Again, all the Clausewitzans in the crowd are probably going to run at me. He believes defense is more powerful because the more the time goes into the attack, the more the attacker needs to maintain logistical lines of support. The more the defense has time to organize their powers and the strength and everything. So that's something to consider. Not sure if it's true online, but whether it is or it isn't, what I learned about online warfare is that it is not, and this is a question that I've been trying to answer for a very long time, it is not regular warfare. Meaning, and I may be wrong, it may change my mind by next week, it is not the same, analogous to the difference between aerial warfare and marine warfare. Both types of the same warfare. Many of the lessons, many of the strategies will still work. Many won't. Is there a battlefield? War is not always war. It can just be fighting. We've seen many fighting around the world that wasn't war. And that fighting can be a part of a real war. But actual information warfare, when it comes to actual computers and networks, I'm sorry, currently doesn't seem to be the same. And the one thing that I really can say about all this, that whatever conclusions I did come to so far, over the years, and from this case specifically with all the case studies I can pull out of it, is that the niches, nothing is 100%, the niches themselves can become the main thing. Things can change very rapidly. Now, the defender's strategy, you already heard some of it, right? And to be honest, it really needs to be told as a story. I don't want to do it in slides. Slides always get in my ways. So this is the best part. Strategies and tactics. So crowd control, right? In street riots, I heard that some places, and this is just a rumor, I haven't actually seen that. In Paris, for example, you would see the police pushing the crowd away, trying to make the riot dissipate. This in some cases works, in some cases it doesn't, but it causes the problem to basically, let's break the windows in every store in the street and put it all on fire. What they did in Estonia with the riots in the streets is they actually contained the situation. Basic incident response. Long before we started with incident response online, incident response existed with physical security. And first responders basically know until, again, depending on what the incident response force is actually capable of and what they're allowed to do. What the policymakers decide is when you jump to an incident, if you're incapable of actually doing anything for whatever reason, contain it. Other forces will come and take care of it later. Maybe it will be a negotiator, maybe it will be special forces. So in Tallinn, they contained the situation. Now, this is really, all the way down, the cultural importance. Culture has a very important role online for some reason when fighting. This is more police work, but still. So they closed the crowd in the liquor area. The crowd was Russian. 5 a.m., everybody went home to sleep. And all the stores had no liquor left in them. So, very culture specific. When we go online and look at some of what they did, we can look at the president's website. The president over there is the queen. Much like in Israel, it's a figure. Someone with importance for the country, but is not running the country. That's the prime minister. Don't quote me in Wikipedia. I don't actually know how the Estonian political system works. So the president's website went down. And they met with the president and they spoke with him and they said, well, so? I mean, the president's website is important. This is a PR issue, it's a saving face issue, it's pride, really, and Estonians are very proud people. But they had to use their resources correctly. They had to make sure the banks remain online. So if the president's website, with all respect to the president and Estonia, will be down for a week, again, same tone. So, I'm not sure that would be the same case in the United States, in Israel, or anywhere else. Culture specific, very interesting. And then there is the parliament's mail systems, and they practically drew the line. They said, we hold the line. If this server goes down, we'll bring it back up. We'll do whatever it takes. Whether that system was more important or whether they just chose arbitrarily, I'll leave for you to decide right now, although the answer is pretty clear. What do attackers usually do when they see the site they attacked is going back up? Can anybody suggest? Oh, come on! They take it back down. They attack again. So the Estonians brought it back up. They got pissed, the attackers got pissed and said, no, that can't happen. Let's attack again. And what actually happened was, many of the attackers concentrated on one website, on one target, leaving the banks and everyone else alone. Interesting, isn't it? It's basically deception. And down there you see something in Hebrew. I didn't actually quote exactly where it's from. It's from the Bible, and I'm sorry I don't have the English version with me. But it basically means do war using tricks and cunning. And the Estonians seem to know this very well. None of these strategies seem to be anything that the Estonians or the attacking Russians, not Russia, did on purpose. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I know on the Estonian side that for sure they didn't. But looking at the incident, especially from the side, it's the first time I'm actually able to see some strategies, some tactics, take them back and analyze them. So, they were able to first divide their forces so they're where they are needed, Clausewitz again, and then they were able to put the line and defend the parliament's website, creating deception and drawing the attackers to attack only that point, while they're basically working on their defenses. They didn't do it on purpose, but they did. Very interesting. And this actually, when analyzing it, doesn't work 100%. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the broken windows theory from New York City. They came up with this, and then Giuliani made it much bigger. It basically says, if one window is broken, this was about graffiti in New York City, then tomorrow, and it's left broken, tomorrow morning the entire street will have broken windows in it. I still didn't follow what the meaning is. So a friend of mine put it in these terms, and I'm sorry if I'm insulting anybody. I'm enjoying this though. So when you enter a bathroom, and it's very, very dirty, you barely want to touch the handle. You walk very, very carefully and tiptoeing into the bathroom, and you try to pee from the side because you don't really want to move the door. I'm sorry. And then you probably pee all over the floor while you're doing that. And sorry for being graphic. And then you run out. You not just run out, right? Basically. However, if you enter a bathroom and it's squeaky clean, it's shining back at you, you'll be very careful. You'll be very careful where you aim, if you're a guy anyway. And then if you actually missed a little bit, you will take some toilet paper and clean up a little bit after you. Sorry for being graphic again, but that's the broken windows theory, according to a friend of mine. So, and that got the point across, to be honest. They threw that aside, and they said, no, the president's site will remain down. So, of course, this was a victory for the Russians who were attacking at that time. But again, it's something that needs to be analyzed further. Intelligence, as I mentioned, intelligence was very important. Looking at where they will attack next, how they will attack, what tools they're using, really was very useful for the Estonians. And border control. Consider, they actually, because they're a small country, were able to block access to their banks from outside of Estonia, which was very interesting. Many different cultural impacts, and I can't really go into a lot of the other strategic cases and tactical studies, or at least case studies, that we can take from the Estonian case. And some of these may not be very good for everybody. Some of them may be policing, some of them may be very simple. I very much like the idea of mob control online. It's not exactly war by proxy, it's not exactly anonymous war, and it's not exactly guerrilla warfare. It's somewhat a combination of them in different order. And you don't use botnets. You make other people do your work for you. It's brilliant. I'm sure we'll see it again. That's what really new in the Estonia case. And I'm really sorry again that I don't have a lot of time to go into strategy, but it's what I really like about this case. So, why this is the first internet war? Political awareness, plain and simple. Defense ministers goes on the wire and says that Russia is attacking us and calls NATO for help. And Bush is speaking with Estonia's president about NATO's preparedness for online attacks. It's all about political awareness, and that's what made this officially the first internet war. Over there on the left, that's Ilar. I'm in the middle, and that's Ivar over there on the right. That's the Estonian CERT. I would really like to go into talk more about strategy, but whatever questions you have about what actually happened, technical questions will be very welcome in Estonia. My main goal here is to get rid of all the FUD going on in the press. This was just yet another attack, but very interesting one. Questions, and thank you.